Hi, and welcome to another episode of Twisted Talks. I'm Tanya.
I'm Josh.
And today is another joint case, and we are going to be covering the Zodiac Killer. And this is she's a hefty case. She's
yeah,
thick.
it is a big case.
She is thick.
So this could be a chunky episode.
Yes.
To be honest.
And we're not sorry about it.
No. Not at all.
Excuse me.
So, getting on to the introduction, I suppose. Jumping straight in.
Let's go.
The Zodiac Killer is the pseudonym of an unidentified serial killer who operated in Northern California in the late 1960s. Now, the case of the Zodiac Killer has been described as the most famous unsolved murder case in American history. The Zodiac Killer murdered 5 known victims in the area of San Francisco Bay between December 1968 and October 1968, operating in various settings, rural, suburban, urban, whichever tickled his fancy at the time.
He wasn't selective.
So he targeted young couples, for the most part, and a lone male taxi driver. His known attacks took place in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city of San Francisco. Now, to clarify what is meant by unincorporated Napa County, because I didn't know that either.
I was going to ask.
Until I saw it. So, an unincorporated community is a place that is not part of an incorporated city or town, which means they don't have their own municipal government. Therefore, people living in these areas live at the mercy and impulses of their county, which may or may not provide necessary services, making it a much easier target in this case for killers. So living in an unincorporated community means that there is not any of the taxes you would have if you lived in an incorporated community. There may be a lack of footpaths, reliable water and sewage services, that kind of thing. People may decide to live in these communities if it's an expensive state and they're looking for somewhere affordable. So these communities often don't have local police to call. The county sheriff would handle any emergencies there.
Okay.
So I imagine that would make a response time a bit slower as well compared to an incorporated place, which would have their own police department or something. Yeah. Now, 2 of the Zodiac Killer's attempted victims actually survived. The Zodiac himself claimed to have murdered 37 victims, and he has been linked to multiple other cold cases, some of which in Southern California or even outside state of California. The Zodiac came up with the name himself in a series of letters and cards that he sent to regional newspapers, in which he threatened to undertake killing sprees, bombings, if his letters and cards were not printed. Some of the letters had cryptograms or ciphers included, in which the Zodiac claimed he was collecting his victims to have as slaves for the afterlife.
Okay.
As you do.
Interesting.
Out of the 4 ciphers he sent, 2 of them are still unsolved to this day, and one of them was actually only cracked in 2020.
I sure remember that.
I remember hearing about it, but I wasn't as interested in true crime and stuff at the time, so I never paid much attention to it.
Oh, I dived into it. I'm pretty sure I was the one that told you about it, or...
You could have back then, to be honest, easily.
Else. I don't know. Anyway, proceed.
There have been many theories as to who the killer was, but only one suspect was publicly named by authorities, and we'll get onto all of that later in the episode. Even though the Zodiac made written communications around 1974, hang on, sorry, I'm confusing myself with my own typing. So please hold the line.
Da, da, da.
Even though the Zodiac was making written communications around 1974, the unusual nature of the case, and I would assume the fact the killer was never actually identified and caught, has led to, obviously, international interest that has continued throughout the years since and continues now, hence why we're sitting here covering the case.
Yes, of course.
Oh,
we forgot to mention, this was, excuse me, very dry throat tonight. This was a recommended case.
Yes.
So this was recommended to us by Trisha.
Trish.
Good old Trish. Thanks, Trish.
Thank you.
So here we are, Trish, fulfilling your wish. So yes, just
if you have any more suggestions, feel free to message me.
Don't be afraid. We will cover them. We're very nice. I promise. No, we are.
Oh yeah. The case was marked as inactive by the San Francisco Police Department in April of 2004, but they reopened the case sometime before March 2007. The case also remains open in the city of Vallejo in Napa County and in Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac murders since 1969.
It's mad that it's like from the 60s
to
now, like...
That's
so...
50 years ago?
It is...
Yeah. Like, it's over 50 years since the first killing.
It's over 60 years, I'm sure.
No, because 1969.
Oh, no, I can tell you. It is 53, 54
It's
years
53
ago.
since 1969.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then, moving forward, you're on the next bit.
So, though the Zodiac Killer... Zodiac, apologies. The Zodiac Killer claimed in letters sent to newspapers that he had committed 37 murders. Investigators only agree on 7 confirmed cases, and that does include the 2 survivors that you mentioned briefly earlier. And we are going to get into these now. So, like always, it's very much back and forth. Josh is going to take off with the first one. I'll go into the second one, so on and so forth. So... he's vaping.
I am not. Don't condone smoking.
Boy, you're so bold.
At least my vape doesn't taste like fucking SpongeBob's house.
Listen, my pineapple peach mango vape is stunning. But again, we do not condone vaping. We don't vape.
But the first lot was the Lake Herman Road murders. So the first murders that were widely put down to the Zodiac Killer were the shootings of high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Arthur Faraday on the 20th of December 1968 on Lake Herman Road, just inside the Benicia city limits. Don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but that's what it's going to be. The couple were on their first date and had planned to attend a Christmas concert at Hogan High School, which was only about 3 blocks from Jensen's home. Instead, they ended up visiting a friend before stopping at a local restaurant and then driving out onto Lake Herman Road. At around 10:15 p.m., David Arthur Faraday parked his mother's Rambler in a gravel turnout. Obviously, they were borrowing Mommy's car. That was well known as a lover's lane. So a lot of people went there on dates and whatnot, or to do a bit of crown jewel fondling. Not long after... Sorry, I need to control myself because I can't laugh at the next bit. Not long after 11 p.m, their bodies were found by Stella Borges, who lived nearby. The Solano County Sheriff's Department investigated the crime, but no leads were found. Using available forensic data, Robert Graysmith suggested that another car pulled into the turnout just before 11 p.m. and parked beside the couple. The killer could have then exited the car that had pulled in, walked to the Rambler, possibly ordering the couple to get out of it, and it looked as if Betty Lou Jensen had exited the car first, but when David Arthur Faraday was halfway out of the Rambler, the killer shot him in the head. Then the killer shot Jensen 5 times in the back as she tried to flee, they believe, as her body was found 28 feet from the car, and then the killer drove away.
She got some distance, to be fair.
Yeah, like that's in the amount of time it probably took him to shoot turn and start shooting. And I imagine she probably wouldn't have started running until the gunshot went off, because you're not going to want to abandon your...
No.
And even if you did...
It's when you hear the gunshot, it's like fight or flight kicks in. Yeah. You're either gone or you freeze. But, like, that must have been fucking terrifying. Like, terrifying.
Scary.
So, the next murder happened just before midnight on July 4th, 1961. Darlene Ferrin, and I think it's Michael McGough. I think that's
I don't know how to pronounce it either. I have his name later in mine.
I'm going to say McGough. So, Darlene and Michael drove to the Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. This is about 4 miles away from the Lake Herman Road murder site that Josh just spoke about, and they decided to park up. So while they were sat in the car, they noticed another car pull in and park up next to them, but it drove away again almost immediately, and then returned about 10 minutes later and parked behind them. So not next to them, behind them. Now, the driver of this mystery car then got out and approached the passenger side door, carrying a flashlight and a 9mm Luger. He pointed his flashlight at Darlene and Michael's eyes. Now, I assume this was to, like, kind of disorient them or blind them.
That's what I would assume as well.
Yeah, and then he fired his gun 5 times. Both Darlene and Michael were hit, and several bullets had gone through their bodies. The killer walked away from the car, but turned around and shot each victim twice more after hearing Michael moaning. He then got back in his car and drove away. At around 12:40 a.m. on July 5th, a man rang the Vallejo Police Department to report and take responsibility for the murders of Darlene and Michael. This caller also took credit for the murders at Lake Herman Road 6.5 months prior. Police were able to trace the call to a phone booth at a gas station, which was at Springs Road and Tuolumne, I think that's how you pronounce that, about 500 metres from Darlene's house and only a few blocks from the Vallejo Police Department. Darlene was sadly pronounced dead at the hospital, but Michael had survived despite being shot in the face, neck and chest. He was able to give police a description of a 26 to 30-year-old male who was around 195 to 200 pounds or possibly more, and he described him as being about 5'8" with short, light brown, curly hair.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So he was actually able to give quite a good description.
And random, on topic / off topic. You know how, like, a lot of the time when you start, like, looking into something or paying attention to certain things or whatever, then it's like they start to pop up more in life.
Yeah.
As you know,
yes.
I've been rewatching Criminal Minds from the start.
Yes.
And literally tonight only before you came in, I just finished the episode, the Zodiac theme.
I was only thinking about that earlier.
Yeah,
actually.
and I was like, it's just such weird timing that the day we're recording this is the day I got to that episode.
For me, I find when I'm researching a case, it comes up on my TikTok.
Yeah, the microphone's listening and whatnot.
It comes up after we've recorded.
Same.
So, like, remember I kept sending you Titanic videos after we recorded the Titanic?
It's always afterwards.
Always after. It'd be so handy if they came up during.
Yeah. That's that.
That's that
part.
one, yeah, sorry.
Perfect. So then on to the first letters from the Zodiac. On the 1st of August 1969, 3 letters from the killer were received at the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle and the San Francisco Examiner, so a letter each. The letters were almost identical to each other, and they were described by a psychiatrist to have been written by someone, quote, unquote, someone you would expect to be brooding and isolated.
Okay. In
the letters, the killer took credit for the shootings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. Each letter also had 1/3 of a 408-symbol cryptogram, which the killer claimed contained his identity. The Zodiac demanded that they be printed on the front page of each newspaper, or he would, quote, cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with 12 people over the weekend, unquote. Now, as well, I just need to point out, there's a lot of things he said in his letters that were misspelt.
Yeah.
I, being a grammar freak, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You being a grammar freak?
Yes, I corrected it. So
Of course.
I'm reading it out as
It should be.
someone with good grammar would read it out. Now, in some of these letters, I'm thinking that is it possible that maybe the misspellings were on purpose and they should be tied in with the cryptograms and ciphers.
It very well could
You
be.
know,
It could be.
But anyway, the Chronicle did publish the third of the cryptogram that they had received, but they published it on page 4 of the next day's edition, not the front page as the author of the letters had demanded.
They deviated.
An article that was printed alongside the quote quoted Vallejo Police Chief Jackie Stilts, and that's Jack E, not Jackie, as saying, quote, "We're not satisfied that the letter was written by the murderer," unquote, and requested that the writer send another letter with more facts to prove his identity. The murders that had been threatened in the letters did not happen, and eventually all 3 parts were published. I personally think that they could very well have believed that the letters were from the murderer, and that was a ply to get more information.
I think so.
In
I
in
think it was
a
quite
tactical
smart.
sense.
Quite tactical, quite smart.
I think that would have been intentional. But who knows? So, on the 7th of August 1969, another letter was received at the San Francisco Examiner with the greeting, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." This was the first time the killer had used this name, the Zodiac. The letter was in response to Chief Stilt's request for more details that would prove he had killed Faraday, Jensen and Ferrin. In this letter, the Zodiac included information about the murders that had not been released to the public yet, as well as a message to the police saying that when they cracked his code, quote, "they will have me," unquote.
Okay.
Now, on the 8th of August 1969, Donald and Betty Harden of Salinas, California, deciphered the 408 symbol cryptogram. It contained a message with many spelling mistakes, and it seemed the killer was referencing The Most Dangerous Game, a short story by Richard Connell that had first been published in January 1924. The Zodiac had also said via the cryptogram that he was collecting slaves for his afterlife, and he would not give away his identity because it would slow down or stop his slave collection.
As you do.
Now, the full decoding of the cryptogram reads, again, there were spelling mistakes that I corrected so that I can read it out grammatically correct. And it goes, quote, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all that I have killed, or all the I have killed, will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collection of slaves from my afterlife." And he finished it off with what I'm assuming is supposed to be an encryption of his name. And it was just one long thing, and it was EBEORIETEMETHHPITI. The only thing I see there is meth.
Same. I'm still stuck on him saying that killing people is better than sex.
Yeah, I have.
He must have been having some
something.
terrible sex.
This. I wasn't sure if it was further on or if I put it there, but I did. So soon after the cipher had been decoded, the Vallejo police made contact with a Vacaville-based psychiatrist to look over the contents. The psychiatric expert concluded that the contents were typical of a brooding and isolated individual, and added the fact the author compared the thrill of murder to sex was usually an expression of inadequacy from a male who sense extreme rejection. The fact the author also claimed to be collecting slaves for his afterlife revealed the individual's sense of supremacy or great power.
Okay.
So
he's...
He thinks he's a god or something.
Thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread?
Yeah, pretty much.
Mad thing.
Mad scone. I'd love a scone.
So, moving on to the next murder. Because obviously those letters happened in between the second and third murders. And now, on September 27th, 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepherd, who were both students of Pacific Union College, were having a picnic at Lake Berryessa on a small island that was connected by a sand spit to Twin Oak Ridge. They were approached by a white male who was about 5'11", more than 170 pounds, and he was wearing a black executioner type hood with clip-on glasses over the eye holes. He also wore a bib-like, it said device, like a bib-like device.
Okay.
On his chest, which was emblazoned with a white cross circle symbol on it, so a circle with a cross in it.
Like the scope of a sniper.
Yeah, which is the Zodiac symbol. He had a gun, which Brian believed to be a .45 caliber. He claimed to be an escaped convict from a jail with a 2-word name. This jail was supposedly in either Colorado or Montana, and a police officer later inferred that this could be Deer Lodge, Montana. The man said that he had killed a prison guard and stolen a car to escape, and that he now needed their money and their car to travel to Mexico because the car that he had stolen was, quote, too hot. Now, that doesn't mean that it's like the car was physically too hot. It just means he stole the car. The police were going to be looking for it, this, that, and the other. The killer had brought...
If it was Grand Theft Auto, he had a high star.
He had 5 stars.
Yeah. Not 5 stars on TripAdvisor, though.
No. So the killer had brought pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline and told Cecilia to tie Brian up before he tied Cecilia up himself. He also checked and then tightened Brian's ties as he discovered that Cecilia had left them quite loose. Brian initially thought this to be some kind of bizarre robbery, but the man soon pulled a knife out and stabbed them both repeatedly. Brian had 6 wounds and Cecilia had 10. The killer then hiked 500 yards or 460 metres back up to Knoxville Road, drew his cross circle symbol on Brian's car door using a felt tip pen, and then under that he wrote Vallejo.
Felt tip pen seems a bit basic.
Yeah. Scratch it in or something. Come on, be spicy. So he then wrote Vallejo 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27th, 69, 6:30, and then under that he wrote by knife. So he was almost listing his crimes. So Vallejo is where they all happened. The 20th of December was the first murder. The 4th of July, 4th of July was the second murder, and then the Lake Berryessa murder was September 27th, and I'm assuming 6:30 was the time that it happened. Now, at 7:40 p.m, the killer called the Napa County Sheriff's Office from a payphone. He first said to the operator that he wished to report a murder before correcting himself and saying no, a double murder. Then he stated that he was the perpetrator of the crime. The phone was found still off the hook, very dramatic, by only a few minutes later by a radio reporter named Pat Stanley, who was a radio reporter with KVON. The phone booth was at the Napa Car Wash on Main Street in Napa. This is about 27 miles or 43 kilometres from the crime scene. Detectives did manage to pull a still wet palm print from the phone, but were never successful in matching it to any of their suspects. A man and his son who were fishing nearby the crime scene had heard Brian and Cecilia's screams, and after finding their bodies, they contacted park rangers who contacted the police. The first law enforcement officers to arrive on scene were deputies Dave Collins and Ray Land. Cecilia was conscious upon their arrival and was able to give the description of the attacker that I read out earlier. And then her and Brian were brought to Queen of the Valley Hospital by ambulance. Cecilia sadly fell into a coma during transport and never regained consciousness, dying 2 days later. But Brian did survive and later gave his account to the media. And that's all that I have on that murder. So yeah, I do think it's strange that he targeted couples, but I don't know if I'm just reading too much into it, but I feel like the women were more the targets than the men.
I think it was both, definitely. And I think that just because it's either early days or it's a case of if he has done this loads of times before, he's gotten away with it so well that he's not getting that attention that he wants by the police putting anything together. So he's either being a bit sloppy to intentionally get noticed, or it's just, it is early days and he's not perfected
His
his,
method yet.
yeah,
No.
to make sure that they
Yeah.
both.
I don't know. I was just thinking that because in the murders that I researched, it seemed like there was a bit more overkill with the women. Like they had more gunshots or more stab wounds.
Yeah.
But again, as I said, could be just me reading too much into it.
And then moving on to the next ones, which is the Presidio Heights murder. On the 11th of October 1969, a white male passenger entered a taxi driven by Paul Stein at the intersection of Mason and Geary Streets in San Francisco. He was requesting to be driven to Washington and Maple Streets in Presidio Heights. Stein drove 1 block past Maple to Cherry Street. It's not known why. The passenger then shot Stein once in the head with a 9mm handgun. He took Stein's wallet and car keys. He also tore away a section of Stein's blood-stained shirt tail, so the part of the tail that kind of curves around your butt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The perpetrator was seen by 3 teenagers who were across the street at 9:55 p.m. and they phoned the police while the crime was happening in progress. They watched as the man wiped down the taxi before walking away towards Presidio, located 1 block to the north. Only 2 blocks from the crime scene, 2 patrol officers, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the surname right, Don Fook.
I would say Fook as well.
Yeah, and Eric Zelms, responding to the call, saw a white man walking along the sidewalk east on Jackson Street and stepping onto a stairway that led up to the front yard of one of the homes on the north side of the street. Now, they say this encounter only lasted maybe 5 to 10 seconds. It was brief, It was quick. Now, Fook estimated the white male pedestrian to be between 35 to 45 years old, 5'10" in height with a crew cut, and that's a similar description to what the teenagers who witnessed the taxi murder had given, except for the age range. The teenagers had described the perpetrator to be 5'8" to 5'9" in height and between 25 to 30 years old, as well as, like previous, had a crew cut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I suppose it sounds like the cops could have been closer to him than the teenagers were.
Yeah. So
it makes sense that to the teenagers it could have been the same person that the cops and the teenagers saw, but from the distance he looked a bit younger.
Yeah.
However, the police radio dispatcher had alerted officers to be on the lookout for a black suspect, so the patrol officers that were responding to the call drove straight past the perpetrator without stopping, because obviously it didn't match the description they were on the lookout for.
But why were they looking for a black suspect? Was it just
the mistake
racism?
made in the description by the dispatcher is still unexplained.
Oh.
So, don't know.
Fair enough.
A search was carried out, but no suspects were found, and this was the final confirmed murder by the Zodiac Killer. At first, the murder of Paul Stein was believed to have possibly been a routine robbery that had escalated into murder. However, on the 13th of October, the San Francisco Chronicle received a new letter from the Zodiac that claimed credit for the murder and contained a torn section of Stein's bloody shirt to prove it. Mm-hmm. The 3 teenage witnesses worked with a police artist to put together a composite sketch of Stein's killer, and a few days later the police artist returned working with the witnesses to prepare a second composite sketch. The case was assigned to Detective Bill Armstrong and Detective Dave Toschi. The San Francisco Police Department investigated roughly 2,500 suspects over a period of years. That's a lot of people and a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that concludes my little bit there.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 1969 mailings, so kind of the correspondence between Zodiac and the police, but more so from Zodiac because the police obviously couldn't speak to him because they didn't know who he was. But on October 14th, 1969, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter from the Zodiac. This letter contained a piece of Paul Stein's shirt tail, as Josh mentioned, and this was his proof that he was the real Zodiac and not an imposter. In this letter, he also threatened to kill school children on a school bus. He wrote, quote, "Just shoot out the front tyre and pick the kiddies off as they come bouncing out," end quote, about how he would do it. Then at 2 p.m. on October 20th, 1969, someone called the Oakland Police Department claiming to be the Zodiac and demanding that one of two prominent lawyers, F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Belly, appear on AM San Francisco. Now, AM San Francisco was a talk show that was on KGO TV and it was hosted by Jim Dunbar. Bailey was unavailable, but Melvin Belly did appear on the show with Dunbar appealing to viewers to keep the phone lines open. Now, someone did call in claiming to be the Zodiac, and when Dunbar asked the caller for a less ominous name to call him by, he chose Sam. The caller then said that he would not reveal his true identity out of fear of being sent to the gas chamber. At the time, the gas chamber was California's capital punishment method. Belly arranged to meet the caller outside a shop on Mission Street in Daly City, but nobody ever turned up. Now, this call was later traced back to a patient in a mental institution, and investigators concluded that this was not the Zodiac.
Yeah, because obviously if they're still checked in, they can't be out there doing these things.
There would be evidence of them leaving the institution. On November 8th, 1969, the Zodiac mailed a card with another cryptogram. This one consisted of 340 characters and went unsolved for over 51 years. On December 5th, 2020, an international team of private citizens, including American software engineer David Oranchak, Australian mathematician Sam Blake, and Belgian programmer Jarl van Eyck, I hope I'm saying that right. In this cipher, Zodiac denied that Sam, the caller on AM San Francisco, was him, stating that he was not in fact scared of being sent to the gas chamber because, quote, "it will send me to paradise all the sooner." The team's findings were submitted to and verified by the FBI, with the FBI stating that the decoded message brought them no further clues to the Zodiac's identity. And then on November 9th, 1969, the Zodiac sent a 7-page letter where he claimed that after he had murdered Paul Stein, 2 police officers had stopped and spoken with him within about 3 minutes of the murder. Excerpts from this letter were published in the Chronicle on November 12th, which included this claim from the Zodiac. And on this same day, Officer Don Fook wrote a memo explaining what had happened on the night of Stein's murder. So I'm assuming that was when him and his partner saw that man going into that house. On December 20th, 1969, exactly 1 year after David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen's murder, the Zodiac mailed a letter to lawyer Melvin Belly with another piece of Stein's shirt, stating in the letter that he wanted Belly to help him. But there was nothing more after that.
That was it.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what exactly he wanted to help with, but yeah.
Interesting. So then we're moving on now to suspected victims of the Zodiac Killer, so unconfirmed. On the 30th of October 1966, Cherry Jo Bates, an 18-year-old student at Riverside City College, spent the evening at the campus library until it closed at 9 p.m. Neighbours reported hearing a scream around 10:30 p.m. Cherry was found dead the next morning, not far from the library, between 2 abandoned houses that were due to be demolished for campus renovations. The wires in Cherry's Volkswagen's distributor cap had been pulled out, presumably by the killer to prevent her being able to use her car. Cherry was beaten and stabbed to death. Nearby, a man's Timex watch with a torn wristband was found, and the watch had stopped at 12:24, but it's believed by the police that the attack obviously had occurred much earlier. 1 month later, on the 29th of November 1966, nearly identical typewritten letters were sent to the police and the Riverside Press Enterprise, titled The Confession. The letter's author took responsibility for the murder of Cherry Jo Bates, providing details of the crime that were not publicly released. The author warned that Cherry was not the first and she will not be the last. In December of 1966, a poem was discovered carved into the bottom of a desk in Riverside City College Library. It was titled Sick of Living / Unwilling to Die. The language and handwriting of the poem resembled that of the Zodiac's letters, It was signed with what was assumed to be the initials RH. During the 1970 investigation, California's top questioned documents examiner Sherwood Morrill expressed his opinion that the poem was written by the Zodiac. So to me this implies that the Zodiac could have very likely been a student at Riverside City College at some stage, if not at the time of the killings.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just like stuck with a mental image of a man just under the desk with like a compass protractor, the thing.
Oh yeah.
The
I don't know, compass, I think.
Yeah, it's like the thing. It's got a point. You
With
stick
the
the point
needle.
in the paper, and then you can make like a perfect circle. That thing, because that's what I used to use to carve into desks in school. But just a man sitting under the table writing his little poem with his little compass protractor.
Yeah, as
whatever
you do
call it.
like. Now, on the 30th of April 1967, exactly 6 months after Cherry's murder, her father Joseph, the Press Enterprise and the Riverside Police all received nearly identical letters in messy handwriting. The Press Enterprise and the police copies read, "Bates had to die, there will be more," with a small scribble at the bottom that resembled the letter Z. Joseph Bates' copy, however, read the same but without the Z scribbled at the bottom. However, in August 2021, the Riverside Police Department's Homicide Cold Case Unit announced that the writer of these letters anonymously contacted investigators in 2016 and was identified using DNA analysis in 2020. He admitted that the letters were a distasteful hoax and apologised for his actions, explaining he had been a very troubled teenager and he wrote the letters as a means of seeking attention, and investigators confirmed that the author of these was not the Zodiac.
Fair play to him for
At
coming
least
forward.
he rang up.
Yeah, and was like,
So-
look, I did this stupid thing when I was a teenager.
Still a very, very distasteful thing to do,
Yes.
but at least
he
had the
owned up to it,
decency
yeah.
to come back, even if it was quite a bit later.
Yeah, and be like, look.
And be like, look, that wasn't the
yeah,
Zodiac.
that was me. That was me.
On the 31st of March 1971, 5 months after an article by the San Francisco Chronicle's police reporter Paul Avery linking the Zodiac to the Riverside murder, the Zodiac mailed a letter to the Los Angeles Times. In this letter, the Zodiac gave credit to the police instead of Paul Avery for discovering his Riverside activity. Quote, "But they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there," unquote. Now, the connection between Cherry Jo Bates, Riverside and the Zodiac remains uncertain. Paul Avery and the Riverside Police Department maintain that the murder of Cherry was not committed by the Zodiac, but did admit that some of the letters relating to Cherry's murder may have been the work of the Zodiac, claiming credit falsely. I can't see why it wouldn't have been the Zodiac.
Yeah, I can't see why
Like, they
he
don't
would-
seem to have any real evidence to say it was or it wasn't.
Yeah.
So why are they so
But I
apparently...
also don't see why he would come forward and claim responsibility for a crime that he
It's
didn't
not
commit.
something he's done previously, and there's enough
it's
crimes.
been crimes that he genuinely has committed.
Yeah, so why not be him?
Yeah, that's weird. So moving on. On March 22nd, 1971, a postcard was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle and was addressed to Paul, is it Avery?
Avery is what I'm saying
Yeah,
anyway.
I have Avery written down and I don't know why. But it was addressed to Paul. Good old Paul. This was believed to be from the Zodiac and appeared to claim responsibility for the disappearance of Donna Ann Lass on September 6th, 1970. This postcard was made from a collage of advertisements and magazine lettering, and there was a scene from an advertisement for Forest Pines condominiums, as well as the text Sierra Club, Sought Victim 12, Peek Through the Pines, Past Lake Tahoe areas, and Around in the Snow. The Zodiac's cross circle symbol was drawn on both the place where you write your return address on a postcard and as well on the lower right section of the front side of the postcard. So I would presume that would be the side with the picture.
Yeah. Either way, it was on both sides.
On both sides. Now, Donna was a nurse at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. She had worked until about 2 a.m. on September 6th and she treated her last patient.
I'm glad we're both suffering as
Yeah,
much as
like-
each other with grammar tonight.
It's because we share one brain cell.
Yeah.
So she treated her last patient at 1:40 a.m. Now later that same day, so into the day of September 6th, Both her employer and her landlord received phone calls from an unknown man claiming that Donna had left town because of a family emergency. Donna was never seen again after this, and her body was never found. Now, what appeared to be a gravesite was found near the Claire Tapan Lodge in Northern California on Sierra Club property, but this amounted to nothing, and no evidence has ever been uncovered to link Donna's disappearance to the Zodiac.
Yeah, like the only thing there I find weird is the phone call made that Donna had left and wasn't coming back, basically, because that sounds out of character for the Zodiac.
That
for
one's
me.
weird, yeah. Now, the postcard, the fact that it said Sierra Club on the postcard and a supposed gravesite was found on Sierra Club property does seem a bit sus to me, but I couldn't find that anything was found there.
Yeah.
And that's all that there is on poor Donna.
So then moving on to the night of March 22nd, 1970, Kathleen Johns was driving from San Bernardino to Petaluma to visit her mother. Kathleen was 7 months pregnant at the time and had her 10-month-old daughter with her. While she was heading west on Highway 132 near Modesto, a car behind her began to honk its horn and flash its headlights. Kathleen pulled off to the side of the road and stopped the car, and the car that was honking and flashing parked up behind her. The man that was in the car got out and approached Kathleen's car, and he stated that he had noticed her right rear wheel was wobbling and offered to tighten the lug nuts. After finishing the job, the man drove off. However, when Kathleen drove forward to re-enter the highway, the wheel almost immediately came off of the car. The man returned, offering to drive her to the nearest gas station for help, and Kathleen and her daughter got into the man's car. So obviously he loosened them, not tightened them.
Now, I just want to say something really quick there before you continue. This goes out to anyone who drives. If you are driving and someone, even if it's the guards or the police or whatever, are trying to get you to stop, you do not have to stop right then and there. If you are on a deserted road, if you feel unsafe, if you feel like something's a bit off about the situation, keep driving and maybe turn your hazard lights on or something to indicate that you've seen that the guards are trying to pull you over, and go somewhere that's well lit, somewhere that's more public, somewhere where
like
you are comfortable. The next petrol station, somewhere safer. And if they say fucking anything to you about it, just explain to them you did not feel safe pulling over on a deserted stretch of the road, and you have pulled over. There's nothing they can say to you. As long as you pull over at some point, it's fine. Do not allow yourself to feel unsafe. Do not put yourself in a dangerous position. Keep driving until it's safe to pull in.
And I don't know how it works in the likes of Europe, Ireland, UK, but I believe, I could be misinformed, but I believe if you are in that kind of situation in the States, you can call 911, let them and tell them that you are being pulled over, but you're not pulling over until you're near a safer location, and the dispatcher will notify the police driver, and then if that police driver is not actually a police driver, the 911 dispatcher is already on the phone.
Exactly. Or alternatively, if you don't want to call 112, 999, 911, whatever, you can call your nearest Garda station, your nearest police station, whatever, wherever you are in the world.
Which I would probably advise more than clogging up the emergency line.
So like, I personally would ring the Garda station and be like, look, there's a guard trying to pull me over, the road's deserted, I don't feel safe pulling over here, I do intend to pull in, I'm just waiting to get somewhere safer or somewhere more well lit or somewhere more public.
Yeah.
Don't be putting yourself in danger. And anyone out there, I was going to say all my women, but I'm sure there's men out there who don't know how to change tyres either. Learn how to change a tyre. I'm sure there are good Samaritans out there that will stop and help you. But there's also people like this guy that are going to unscrew your lug nuts, your wheel's going to come off. Honestly, my dad taught me to change a tyre when I was like 7 or 8. It's the best thing he ever did.
And off the record, also, in case of emergency, learn how to swing the tyre iron.
Yes.
I'm not condoning it, I'm not promoting violence, but if in a situation of self-defence it happens to be there, you know, what can you do?
One more tip. If you are intending on defending yourself with a baseball bat, put a sock on the end of the baseball bat or the hurley or whatever you're going to use. So the side that you're going to hit the person with, put a sock on it. Because if they grab that and try to take it from you, they're only going to get the sock. They're only going to get the sock, which gives you a few seconds to swing back and hit them real good while they're wondering, why the fuck is there a sock in my hand?
And make sure to stink you and throw them off.
So there you go, life advice with Josh and Tanya.
Don't quote us on it. We're not liable for any personal decisions made due to this information. Thank you. Anywho, so like I said, Kathleen and her daughter got into the man's car. During the ride, the car passed multiple service stations, but the man did not stop at any of them. For about an hour and a half, he drove back and forth around the back roads near Tracy, which I believe is a city in California. When Kathleen asked why he was not stopping, he would change the subject, clearly avoiding the question.
Yeah.
When the man finally stopped at an intersection, Kathleen jumped out with her daughter and they hid in a field. The man searched for them using a flashlight, calling out that he would not hurt them, before eventually giving up. As the man could not find them, he got back into the car and drove off. Kathleen hitched a ride to the police station in Patterson. I really understand, obviously, when you're stranded there needing to hitch a ride to a police station.
But given what had just happened, I would have walked.
I would have I would have been too paranoid.
Yeah, I would have walked, I would have crawled, I would have ran, I would have done whatever.
Yeah, but then again, the hitching could also have been a flight mode.
A flight moment, like
as well.
You
want to get to the police ASAP, because what are the odds of another psychopath driving up just after the other?
Exactly, and she had not only herself to think of and protect, but her young daughter
and she was
her
pregnant.
Unborn child.
Yeah,
exactly.
When Kathleen gave her statement to the sergeant on duty, she spotted the police composite sketch of Paul Stein's killer and recognised him as the man who had abducted her and her daughter. Fearing that he may return to kill them, the sergeant had Kathleen wait in the dark at a nearby restaurant, and when Kathleen's car was discovered, it had been gutted and torched.
Oh.
So whoever this was not leaving DNA. The majority of accounts say that the man had threatened to kill Kathleen and her daughter while driving them around, but there is at least one police report that disputes that. Kathleen's account to Paul Avery of the Chronicle indicates that the abductor left his car and searched for her in the dark with a flashlight. However, in one report she made to the police, she stated that he did not leave his car.
Say that again, sorry, I was reading something.
So basically, in her account that she gave to the Paul Avery of the Chronicle, she indicated about how the abductor left the car and searched for them in the dark with the flashlight. But in one of the police reports that she made, she stated that he never left the car.
Okay.
So there's conflicting
reports,
information there,
which could be confusion in baby brain and the stress of the situation, or it could also be possible that she just made parts of it up.
Yeah. But who knows, at least they were okay anyway.
Yeah,
and
that's the main thing. Now, there is no definitive answer as to how many people the Zodiac Killer attacked or killed. The attacks on Cherry Joe, Kathleen Johns and Donna Lass would suggest a new MO for the killer, if they were to be linked to him, with the targets being individual women who were abducted instead of targeting couples and killing them.
And even the
sight.
Paul Stein one was very different.
A sole person, and that was linked to him. Now, many of the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, these were 7 unsolved murders of singular female hitchhikers that took place in Sonoma County and Santa Rosa of the North Bay area of California in 1972 and 1973. So many of these murders exhibit these themes of this new MO, and have been considered potential Zodiac crimes, though there is no concrete proof linking them.
Speculation.
It's all speculation.
Circumstantial evidence might be there for the speculation, but nonetheless speculation.
Now, the strangulation of these victims is in line with the Zodiac's October 1970 claim to kill by rope. And in 1986, Robert Graysmith published a list comprising of 49 confirmed and possible Zodiac targets, and this did include some of the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murder victims. Some writers believe that the Zodiac should be considered a suspect for some higher profile unsolved murders, which are not currently considered to be linked. Now, while these claims are kind of unpopular, John A. Cameron documented similarities between the murder of John Benet Ramsey and the Zodiac's actions. The fake ransom note at the John Benet Ramsey scene displayed Zodiac-like misspellings and references to crime films. And Cameron also wrote that on the night of her death, John Benet had told a neighbour that she was going to meet Santa Claus. Zodiac was known to have worn a costume at Lake Berryessa and also claimed to use disguises. Now, if Cameron is correct, then this would mean that Zodiac killed over the span of decades.
Yeah.
Now, I personally don't see him going from murdering, let's say, teenagers and adults to murdering a very young child.
There is something that will come up later in mine that might change your mind on that.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
If one of the potential suspects was probably the Zodiac, which I think they are.
Okay, right. Continue. Proceed.
Oh, is that?
Yes.
Perfect.
That's your cue.
You
really need to come up with a system.
So then kind of moving on to further Zodiac communications. The Zodiac Killer continued to communicate with the authorities for the rest of 1970 via letters and greeting cards to the press. In a letter that was postmarked the 20th of April 1970, the Zodiac wrote, "My name is," followed by a 13-character cipher that has to this day not been solved. The Zodiac went on to state that he was not responsible for the recent bombing of a police station in San Francisco, referring to the death of Sergeant Brian McDonald 2 days after the bombing at Park Station in Golden Gate Park on February 18, 1970. He added that there, quote, "There is more glory to killing a cop than a kid because a cop can shoot back," unquote. The letter also included a diagram of a bomb the Zodiac claimed he would use to blow up a school bus. Zodiac sent a greeting card postmarked April 28, 1970 to the Chronicle. He wrote on the card, "I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast." Blast was all capitalised.
Lovely.
Followed by the Zodiac's cross-circle signature. The Zodiac threatened to use the bus bomb soon unless the newspaper published the full details that he had written. He also wanted to start seeing people wearing, quote, "some nice Zodiac buttons," unquote.
Some nice Zodiac buttons.
Yeah.
So, love that.
I'm assuming that's like a badge.
Yeah, like a badge or
with
a pin
the
or
symbol
something that
on
says
it.
Zodiac rocks.
But and also then his fascination with bombing a school bus makes me wonder as well about,
because he had mentioned briefly, I said earlier, about shooting kids as they were
Yeah.
shooting tires off a bus.
so
and then
whether
picking kids
he did it or didn't do that, he clearly thought about it multiple times.
off. Okay, I'm opening up to the idea
Yeah.
of him having killed John Benet Ramsey.
In a letter postmarked June 26, 1970, the Zodiac said that he was upset that he did not see people wearing Zodiac buttons. He wrote, quote, "I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .28. And that is, it's possible that he was referring to the murder of 25-year-old Sergeant Richard Radtich 1 week earlier at 5:25. Oh, sorry. Full stop. At 5:25 a.m. on June 19th. Richard was writing a parking ticket in his squad car when someone unrelated to the traffic violation shot him in the head with a .38 caliber pistol through the closed driver's side window. Richard died 15 hours later. The San Francisco Police Department denies that the Zodiac was involved and the murder remains unsolved. I'm like, how can you deny he was involved? I know you can't confirm.
He said he did it.
But he said he did it, and two, the murder remains unsolved. So I haven't, like, I'm like, how do you know that he didn't?
Yeah.
Included with the letter was a Phillips 66 road map of the San Francisco Bay Area. On the image of Mount Diablo, the Zodiac had drawn a cross circle similar to those from previous correspondence.
Mm-hmm.
At the top of his cross circle, he put a 0, a 3, a 6 and a 9. The instructions that came with it stated that 0 was to be set to mag n, so I'm assuming that means magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a 32-letter cipher that the killer claimed would, along with the code, lead to the location of a bomb that he'd buried and set to detonate in the fall or autumn. The cipher was never decoded and the alleged bomb was never located. In another letter to the Chronicle postmarked July 24th, 1970, the Zodiac took credit for Kathleen John's abduction 4 months after the incident. In a July 26th, 1970 letter, the Zodiac paraphrased a song from the Mikado, adding his own lyrics about making a little list of the ways that he planned to torture his slaves in paradise. A final note at the bottom of the letter said, P.S. The Mount Diablo code concerns radians plus hashtag sign, so hash sign, in inches along the radians. I have no idea what that means. In 1981, a close examination of the radian hint by Zodiac researchers Garrett Penn led to the discovery that a radian angle, when placed over the map per the Zodiac's instructions, pointed to the location of 2 Zodiac attacks. So, man was good with a map.
Okay.
On the 7th of October 1970, the Chronicle received a card signed by the Zodiac with the cross circle and a small cross reportedly drawn with blood. The card's message was put together by sticking words and letters from an edition of the Chronicle, and 13 holes were punched across the card. Inspectors Armstrong and Toshi agreed that it was highly probable that the card had been sent by the Zodiac.
So he's drawn his symbol with blood now.
Cute.
Fancy. Very macabre. So on October 27th, 1970, Chronicle reporter Paul Avery, I have it written down right this time, who had been covering the Zodiac case, was sent a Halloween card signed with the letters Z, and the cross circle symbol used by the Zodiac. The card was handwritten with the message, Peekaboo, you are doomed. This was taken very seriously and the Chronicle ran a front page story on it. Soon after getting this card, Avery also received an anonymous letter alerting him to the similarities between the Zodiac's killings and the Cherry Joe Bates murder. Avery then published these findings in the Chronicle on November 16th, 1970. Full stop.
Boom. So.
That's your cue. Full stop.
Full stop.
Full steam ahead.
So final Zodiac letter. After the Lake Tahoe card, which I believe was dated March 3rd, 1971, the Zodiac stayed silent for almost 3 years, and then the Chronicle received a letter from him postmarked the 29th of January 1974, where he praised The Exorcist as, quote, the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen, unquote. The letter included a snippet of a verse from the Mikado and an unusual symbol at the bottom that remains unexplained by researchers. And also, just before I say this next part, majority of the letters, if not all of them, that I have gone through so far as well, also had a, I suppose you could call it, a score at the bottom. With the Zodiac symbol and SFPD for San Francisco Police Department saying him, however many, them, zero. But I just left that out, but I'm about to mention it with this one.
Okay.
And the Zodiac ended this letter with a new score, me equals 37, SFPD equals 0.
Yeah, I think I had seen something about that as well. So yeah, he was keeping track. Now, as well as these confirmed letters, there were a lot of other letters sent in that aren't really confirmed, so I'm just going to get into that quickly now. So many other communications were sent by the public to members of the news media over the years, and some did contain similar characteristics to the Zodiac's letters. Postcards and ciphers, most were able to be authenticated. Sorry, I read that totally wrong. Zodiac. What happened to the headphones?
I don't know.
So sorry. Rewind. And some of these letters did contain similar characteristics to the Zodiac's letters, postcards and ciphers. Most were able to be authenticated. Thank you. I would do a bow, but we're in the car.
Smack at the steering, will you?
Most were able to be authenticated as nothing to do with the Zodiac based on handwriting. although some are still debated to this day. One of these letters was sent to the Chronicle and postmarked May 8th, 1974, where the writer stated that the movie Badlands was a murder glorification and asked the paper to cut all its ads. This was signed A Citizen, and many think that the handwriting, tone and surface irony were very similar to early Zodiac letters. The Chronicle then received a letter postmarked July 8th, 1974, complaining about them publishing the writings of anti-feminist columnist Marco Spinelli. Now listen, when I read Spinelli, my brain just immediately went to Recess. Spinelli!
Oh my god, I haven't thought about that in so long.
I lived for Recess.
Same.
The movies were class. But anyway, Marco Spinelli. And this was signed The Red Phantom, Red with Rage. Very dramatic. I am the Red Phantom.
Red with rage.
Red with rage. Another letter dated April 24th, 1978 was initially declared authentic, but 3 months later experts declared it as a hoax. Now this was 3 different experts who claimed that it seemed to be much more of a fan mail kind of letter to do with Detective Dave Toschi. And they believed that the detective had actually written this himself, though he obviously denies this, and the authenticity of this letter is still debated. On March 3rd, 2007, an American Greetings Christmas card that had been sent to the Chronicle in 1990 from Eureka City was rediscovered in their photo files by an editorial assistant named Daniel King. In the envelope with the card was a photocopy of 2 US postal keys on a magnet keychain. The handwriting on the envelope was similar to the Zodiac's, but forensic document examiner Lloyd Cunningham declared it to be inauthentic. There was no cross-circle symbol or return address, and the card itself was unmarked. Now, many do disagree with Cunningham's opinion, but the Chronicle did hand over all the material to the Vallejo Police Department for further analysis.
Okay. And no doubt the FBI probably saw it all too. So then the apparent source of the Zodiac alias is next on the agenda. So this is someone I'm pretty sure you mentioned earlier, Melvin Belly.
Yes.
Melvin Belly, in his 1976 autobiography, described an engineered encounter with himself, undercover police officers, and a Riverside law student. The student, a young man, had allegedly claimed that he was the Zodiac, but after meeting the young man face to face, Belly concluded that they were investigating the wrong man for the crimes of the Zodiac. In 2002, Robert Graysmith described the possibility that a previous student at Pacific High School in the San Bernardino area was the source of the Zodiac alias.
Interesting.
Yep, so that's just a very short little snippet. Okay. I didn't really go into that much.
Okay. Now moving on to the 21st century developments. In April 2004, as Josh said, the Zodiac case was marked as inactive by the San Francisco Police Department. They cited caseload pressure and resource demands, and they effectively closed the case. However, it was reopened in March of 2007, and it is still open in Napa County and the city of Riverside. And you said somewhere else, Solano?
I think so. I believe I did. Solano County.
Solano County, thank you. In May 2018, so very recently, the Vallejo Police Department announced that they had intentions of collecting the Zodiac's DNA from the stamps that he used to post his confirmed letters, ciphers and postcards, and that the DNA would be analysed by a private lab and would be checked against DNA samples on GED Match. Now, GED Match I'm actually kind of familiar with because I uploaded my DNA there once to do with that situation with basically I put my DNA on 23andMe and someone came up as a relative who was adopted, and we were trying to figure out how we were related to get some answers for her. So she asked me to upload my DNA to GED Match. I did, and it was a little bit scary. I don't know, it felt a bit not intrusive, but it just felt a little bit weird having my DNA on that specific site because it is used by so many different I don't want to say companies, but like the police use it.
Organisations.
So basically they did this because they were hoping that they would be able to catch him in a similar fashion to the way the Golden State Killer, Joseph James D'Angelo, was caught.
Okay.
So what they did was they got his DNA from one of the victims or one of the crimes that had happened, put it in GED match. A relative came up and they were able to trace back the family tree until they found their suspect.
Yeah.
And then they matched his DNA to the original DNA sample.
And bada bing.
Bada bing, bada boom, he's in jail.
So,
In
the moral of the story is if you're planning on committing any serious crimes, do not get your DNA checked, even if it's just for ancestry.
And tell your family not to get their DNA checked, because see, when I put my DNA up, if anyone in my family, any way related to me, had committed a murder or a crime and the police were looking for them and had checked the GED match, I would have come up as related to them, so they would have been able to go back through my tree and see how I was related to this person or who this person might be. Now, in May 2018, a Vallejo detective said that they were expecting results in several weeks, but as of this month, October 2022, there have been no results reported at all. Now, I think this is actually meant to go up in November, but it's October right now while we're recording.
Yes.
Because we go ahead of time.
It is indeed. This will be the first week of November, I think this episode's up.
I think so, yeah.
So, it has been full stopped.
Yes. Continue.
So, then we're moving on to potential... suspects we're basically moving on to. So, starting with Arthur Lee Allen, who I personally think is the Zodiac.
This would be the most kind of believed suspect, but I actually don't know much about him myself, so I am very interested.
Yeah, I think from mine, I'm like, fairly set on him.
Okay.
In the book Zodiac by Robert Graysmith, Robert put forward Arthur Lee Allen, who died in 1992, as a potential suspect based on circumstantial evidence. Arthur Lee Allen had been... Excuse me,
okay?
part 2.
Are you dying?
No. Arthur Lee Allen had been interviewed by police since the early days of the Zodiac investigation, and he was the subject of multiple search warrants over a 20-year period. Robert noted that in 2007 many police detectives described Allen as the most likely suspect. In 2010, Dave Toschi said that all the evidence against Allen ultimately turned out to be negative. In 2018, Dave's daughter said that her father always thought Allen was the killer, but they didn't have the evidence to prove it. On the 6th of October 1969, Detective John Lynch of the Vallejo Police Department interviewed Arthur Lee Allen. Allen had been reported to have been in the area of the Lake Berryessa attack against Hartnell and Shepherd on the 27th of September 1969. However, Allen claimed... My voice broke. I thought we were past that age.
Second puberty.
Allen claimed to have been that's the sound of the scuba diving. To be scuba diving at Salt Point on the day of the attacks. Allen came to the attention of police once again in 1971 when a friend of his, Donald Cheney, reported to police in Manhattan Beach, California, that Allen had spoken about his desire to kill people, used the name Zodiac, and secured a flashlight to a firearm for
visibility.
Yeah, that's the one, at night. Donald Cheney said that this conversation happened no later than the 1st of January 1969. So, assuming he's telling the truth, that's interesting. Jack Mullinax of the Vallejo Police Department wrote that in 1958, Allen had received a dishonourable discharge from the US Navy and had been fired from his job as an elementary school teacher in March 1968 after claims of sexual misconduct with students. And in general, Allen was well regarded by those who knew him. However, he was also described as fixated on young children and angry at women.
You said elementary school teacher. Primary school teacher.
I believe so.
That's like, well, here it's juniors to 6th class, so like 5 to 12. That's
And even here in
Disgusting.
town,
Despicable.
that's only 1st to 6th.
Yeah.
Because juniors and seniors is like kindergarten over there, isn't it?
Yeah, so like 1st class to 6th class. So you're a fucking pervert,
Yeah.
Arthur.
So there's that. In September of 1972, San Francisco police got a search warrant for Allen's residence. In 1974, Arthur Lee Allen was arrested for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy.
Oh my God.
He pleaded guilty and served 2 years in prison. Vallejo police served another search warrant for Allen's residence in February of 1991. 2 days after Arthur Lee Allen's death in 1992, another search warrant was served by the Vallejo police, and they seized items from Allen's residence. In July of 1992, victim Mike Magoo identified Allen from a photo lineup as the man who had shot him in 1969. Mike said, "That's him, that's the man who shot me." However, police officer Donald Folk, who is speculated to have seen the Zodiac fleeing from the Stein killing, said in the 2007 documentary, his name was Arthur Lee Allen, that Allen weighed around 100 pounds more than the man he saw, also saying that his face was too round. Nancy Slover, who had received a call from the Zodiac after the Magoo and Farron shooting, said that Arthur Lee Allen did not sound like the man on the phone. Okay, fair enough to the weight thing, but people can manipulate their voice.
Yeah.
In regards to that last thing.
Yeah.
There was other evidence against Allen, and again, it was all entirely circumstantial. Now, just to clarify on circumstantial evidence, it is usually something which suggests a fact by implication and or reasoning. For example, the appearance of the crime scene, testimony that suggests a link with the crime, physical evidence that suggests criminal activity, a fingerprint, certain witness testimonies, forensic evidence and physical evidence. So there's a lot of different ways evidence can be circumstantial. Circumstantial evidence against Allen consisted of the following that I saw. A letter that was sent to the Riverside Police Department from Bates Killer was typed with a Royal typewriter with an Elite type, which was the same brand that was found during the February 1991 search of Allen's residence. He owned and wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch. He lived in Vallejo and worked only minutes away from one of the Zodiac victims' home and from where one of the killings took place. So then in 2002, the San Francisco Police Department developed a partial DNA profile from the saliva on the stamps and envelopes of the Zodiac letters, as you said. Yeah. This partial DNA was compared to the DNA of Arthur Lee Allen, and a DNA comparison was also made with the DNA of Don Cheney, or Cheney.
I think it's Cheney.
There's no A.
It's like Dick Cheney, Cheney.
Oh.
That's the only reason I know how to pronounce it. I don't even know who Dick Cheney is.
Neither do I.
I've heard the name.
But that's easier to pronounce.
I think
So Don Cheney is what we're going with from here on out. I think he was something
to do with the White House at one point.
So that being the former close friend of Allen and the first person to suggest that the Zodiac Killer might be Allen, neither of the test results indicated a match. Therefore, Arthur Lee Allen and Don Cheney were excluded as the contributors of the DNA on the stamps and envelopes. A retired police handwriting expert, Lloyd Cunningham, who worked on the Zodiac case for decades, said they gave me banana boxes full of Allen's handwriting, and none of his writing even came close to the Zodiac, nor did DNA extracted from the envelopes come close to Arthur Lee Allen. First of all, I don't know, in terms of handwriting, some people I'd imagine would easily be able to disguise their handwriting.
Yeah.
So
it's the DNA. I'm stuck on the DNA not matching.
I'm like, see, the thing there is, it just says was excluded as results. Neither of the results indicated a match. Okay. But does that mean completely rule it out, or does that mean inconclusive? Because inconclusive doesn't mean it wasn't their DNA. Yeah. It just means that the test didn't match up.
Yeah, like maybe there wasn't enough DNA on the stamps or something, or it wasn't contaminated by the glue on the stamps, or
so
like
to them, I'm like, yeah, that's fair enough. They couldn't get definitive evidence, but there's still quite a bit of circumstantial, and his history with the school, how he was described as angry towards women and a weird fascination with children. Either way, he was a fucking weirdo.
Yeah, he was a strange
Either
man.
way, whether he's a Zodiac or not.
Strange
I
man.
lean quite a bit towards him.
He's an odd fish. An odd fish. Now, the next suspect is Gary Francis Post, and that's Post with an E on the end.
Poste.
Poste.
I don't even know how it's said though.
So in October 2021, which is only last year, a team of over 40 cold case investigators, comprising of former law enforcement investigators, military intelligence officers, and journalists who were known as the case breakers, claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer. They believed he was a man named Gary Francis Post. He died in 2018 at 80 years of age, and they claimed to have uncovered forensic evidence and photos from his dark room, and also stated that scars on his forehead matched those said to be described on the killer. They also said that removing the letters of Post's name from one of the Zodiac's cryptograms revealed an alternate message. After this, the FBI stated that the case was still open and there was no new information to report. And local law enforcement expressed scepticism to the Chronicle, with Riverside police officer Ryan Railsback saying that the case breakers' claims relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, and author Tom Voigt called the claims, quote, bullshit, noting that no witnesses had ever described the murderer as having scars on his
That's what I
forehead.
was thinking as well. I have not seen that anywhere in the research.
The composite sketches don't have anything like that. Like,
No.
I think they might have some like creases and wrinkles on his forehead.
Yeah, but
they
that's
wouldn't be
called age.
scars. They wouldn't be scars. Like,
Interesting.
very interesting.
But yeah, I think the scars part at least sounds made up.
Yeah.
So, an independent inquiry in 2018 by the Italian journalist Francesco Amicone implicated Joseph, aka Giuseppe Bevilacqua, former superintendent of the Florence American Cemetery and Memorial, as a suspect in both the Zodiac and Monster of Florence murder cases, which is also a case I actually want to cover at some stage.
What's that? The Monster of Florence. Was
I
that
can't
murders
remember.
in Italy?
I haven't looked into it much, but it is in Italy, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, because Florence. But Giuseppe testified at the trial of the Monster of Florence prime suspect Pietro Paggiani in 1994. Francesco Amicone claimed that on the 11th of September 2017 that Giuseppe confessed to being the killer in both cases. I'm assuming privately to him is what he's getting at there.
Yeah.
But investigations by the Italian authorities into Giuseppe were suspended in 2021.
Okay.
So only last year. Now,
Are you okay? Are you dying?
I'm just double checking. I'm dun.
Da, 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 da.
This is other suspects, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So you now is not, that's why I stopped.
Oh, were you finished?
Yeah, because that's that, then you have one, then I have one. Then,
Okay,
yeah.
see, I was waiting for you to
So
read
I
on.
am okay.
Sorry about that,
You're
folks.
not okay.
I'm not okay.
Neither of us are okay.
No. So anyway, continuing
Someone
on.
call the
Now,
mental
bear in mind, guys,
hotline.
right?
Um,
It's 10 to 12 at night, and we both have one brain cell that we share. I don't know whose turn it is, but I've had work, and I had to do a first aid course on Zoom, so I am
Hence the time as well.
deceased, absolutely deceased. My brain is mush.
Can't wait to have a
But
cup
I
of
know
tea
what to do if someone
afterwards.
faints, so that's
So that's it.
yeah. Yeah, fun fact. Did you know if someone faints, you don't put them in the recovery position?
That makes sense.
You put them lying on their back with their legs elevated to like chest level because it brings all the blood back to their
Yeah.
head. So I did retain information from that. But anyway, in 2009, Mystery Quest, which was a TV series on the History Channel, did an episode where they investigated newspaper editor Richard Gajowski, I think is how it's pronounced. There's a couple of names coming up in this section that I'm going to absolutely butcher.
And I'm sure I have been all along at some
sure,
point.
look, how bad. At the time of the murders, Kajowski worked for The Good Times, which was a San Francisco counterculture newspaper. Don't know what that means. His appearance resembled the Zodiac composite sketch, and Nancy Slover, who was the Vallejo police dispatcher that was contacted by the Zodiac Killer after the Blue Rock Springs attack. No, sorry, after the lake. It was after the Shepherd and...
Hang on and I'll get you that name.
I'm pretty sure it was after...
Lake Harmon Road?
No, it was the...
Blue Rock.
No, it was one of the ones I had, I think. It was
Lake
the
Berryessa.
Lake Berryessa, I think, yes. So, look, it was either...
Bingo!
It was either after the Blue Rock Springs attack or the Lake Berryessa attack. He contacted the police dispatcher, Nancy Slover, and she identified Richard Gajowski's voice as being the same as the Zodiac's voice. That's all there is on that. That's kind of the only evidence that kind of... Yeah, that's the only evidence that kind of links him to it. And then next there's Lawrence Kaye, K-A-Y-E, who was later known as Lawrence Kane for some reason.
Wait, so am I on to the next victim?
I thought I was just doing...
Back and forth.
Oh, sorry, yes, it is your turn. I also... Look, guys,
She's trying to skip me!
Right, I also fucked this up when I was researching. I researched the ones that Josh was meant to do.
So wish you had to do a bit of a revamp.
As I said, brain mush.
Mush.
Sorry, my
Slush
bad. Continue. We'll get on to Lawrence later.
A retired police detective, Steve Hodel, argues in his book The Black Dahlia Avenger that his own father, George Hodel, was the 1937 Black Dahlia Avenger killer.
His daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Now, this book led to the release of previously suppressed files and wire recordings by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office of his father, which showed that George Hodel, had been a prime suspect in the murder of Elizabeth Short, so a victim of the Black Dahlia Avenger killer.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Kaye, a district attorney, wrote a letter afterwards stating that if George Hodel were still alive, he would be prosecuted for the crimes. In a follow-up book, Steve Hodel argued a circumstantial case that his father was also the Zodiac Killer, based on a police sketch, the similar styles of the Zodiac letters and the Black Dahlia Avenger letters, and questioned document examination. And that is it
now
on that little snippet.
That one I am less inclined to believe, simply because the Black Dahlia murder was so brutal. Like, Elizabeth Short, I think her name was.
Yeah.
That woman was beyond murdered. Like, he brutalized her. Like, I'm sure he cut her in half.
When a killer is killed.
But yeah, so to me that doesn't fit, because I don't personally see a murderer going from committing such a brutal crime as the Black Dahlia murder to simply shooting and stabbing people and
the Black Dahlia one, the Black Dahlia Avenger went after the Black Dahlia. So, like, killed the killer.
Oh, okay, right. I might have it wrong in my head. So
yeah, like, because Elizabeth Short is the Black Dahlia,
and
the Black Dahlia Avenger killed her. Hence why he's the Avenger, not the Black Dahlia.
Explain that to me again.
So, Elizabeth Short
Yes.
is the Black Dahlia.
Yes.
The Black Dahlia Avenger is supposedly Steve Hodel's father, George Hodel, and he's called the Black Dahlia Avenger because he killed the Black Dahlia, being Elizabeth Short.
Elizabeth Short was a murderer?
From what I gathered from this, yeah.
No way.
Elizabeth Short was supposedly the Black Dahlia.
We're going to have to do this case because I had no idea about this. So now we've got two cases from this.
Because when I was originally typing that little snippet,
yeah,
I was like, I got confused at first because I was like, why does it say Avenger? Because I thought they were on about the Black Dahlia. And then I was like, oh, Black Dahlia Avenger, so the person who killed the Black Dahlia. But I'm going by the thing they're saying about letters. I'm assuming the Black Dahlia Avenger killed more than just Elizabeth Short. But
if he was an Avenger and he was killing murderers, then why would he
start going
people?
Off like the Zodiac, killing random people? Now, I don't know anything about the Black Dahlia Avenger's other kills, whether they were criminals or not, because I didn't look into that, because obviously it doesn't pertain to this. So I don't know if all the kills by the Black Dahlia Avenger was
criminals and murderers.
Or whether it was just random people.
We should definitely do that as a joint case sometime.
But yeah.
Is it my turn? Can I finally talk
Yeah,
about Lawrence?
next person.
Okay. So Lawrence Kay, later known as Lawrence Kane, was picked out of a photo lineup by Kathleen Johns, who claimed to have been abducted by the Zodiac Killer.
Kathleen's back.
After Paul Stein's murder. And she said that Kane closely... No, sorry, I'm after skipping sentences. My apologies. So, he was picked out of the lineup by Kathleen, who claimed to have been abducted. Patrol officer Don Fook, who had possibly observed the Zodiac Killer after Paul Stein's murder, said that Kane closely resembled a man that he and Eric... Now, you had Eric Zelms, I have Eric Helms. One of us has a typo and it's probably me. So him and Eric had encountered the night that Paul Stein was murdered, and Kane also worked at the same hotel as Donna Lass. Now, additionally, Kane was diagnosed with impulse control disorder after an accident in 1962 left him with brain injuries. He was arrested for voyeurism and prowling. This is another name that I am going to absolutely butcher. I have no concept of how to pronounce it, but I'm going to say Fecal Zeroe.
What? Sure.
Fecal Zeroe.
Where am I looking?
Right there, Fecal Zeroe.
Your pronunciation is as good as mine would be.
Yeah. He was a French-Moroccan business consultant, and he stated that in 2021 that he had solved the Z13 cipher from the Zodiac and that it read, "My name is Care," which he posits or theorizes is likely a typo for K, but the fact of him solving the cipher is still very much disputed.
Okay.
So it's not confirmed that that cipher has been solved.
Okay.
So the FBI haven't confirmed it.
Interesting. So, like, it obviously is a decryption in
Yeah.
some sense, but they don't know is that the decryption that the Zodiac wanted,
Yeah.
the method or whatever.
Yeah, they don't know if it's correct.
I see. So, police informants accused Richard Marshall of being the Zodiac Killer, claiming that he hinted in private at being a murderer. Richard lived in Riverside in 1966 and San Francisco in 1969, close to the scenes of the murders of Bates and Stein. He was a silent film enthusiast and projectionist, screening The Red Phantom, a name used by the author of a possible 1974 Zodiac letter.
Red Phantom. Mm-hmm. Red with rage.
So, Detective Ken Narlow said that Marshall makes good reading, but not a very good suspect in my estimations.
I would agree.
And that's that one. I
do think he probably did send the Red Phantom letter.
That's possible.
But
and
that
then
was
the
never,
letter wouldn't have been from the Zodiac.
That
in
was
that
never
case,
confirmed to be from Zodiac.
Yeah, so that's very possible.
So moving on, in February 2014, first of all, it's mad that these murders happened in the 60s and 70s, and in 2014 there was still suspects coming out.
Yeah.
So in February 2014, it was reported that Louis Joseph Myers had confessed to a friend in 2001 that he was the Zodiac Killer. Now, he did this after he learned that he was dying from cirrhosis of the liver. He asked his friend, Randy Kenny, to go to the police once he had died. Myers died in 2002, and Kenny claims that he had trouble getting officers to take his claims seriously. Connections between Myers and the Zodiac include: he went to the same high school as David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. He allegedly had worked in the same restaurant as Darlene Ferrin. Myers was stationed overseas between 1971 and 1973 when there was no confirmed correspondence from the Zodiac. Kenny says that Myers told him he had targeted couples because he had had a bad breakup with his girlfriend. Now, officers are said to be sceptical of the claims, but are willing to investigate if Kenny can provide credible evidence. Now, obviously...
How are you going to provide credible evidence now, this much after, like?
Exactly. Now,
and
that
especially
one,
when it was just verbal conversation.
Exactly. Now, that one, I feel...
that
has substance.
Yeah, especially the being overseas thing and
the fact that he potentially knew three of the victims, the first three victims.
Yeah.
First three known victims. And then him having a bad breakup with his girlfriend could have been his catalyst or his trigger to start murdering.
And with your theory of why the woman...
Mm-hmm, exactly. Like, I do think the woman wasn't necessarily the target. I think that's what I said earlier. But
got more
there
of
was
the
more
rage.
rage.
Or
yeah.
more even mental torture in terms of the one where they reckon she got 28 feet away and,
Yeah.
made her basically see her boyfriend get shot in the head first and then went for her.
Yeah, and that was the first case.
Yeah.
So that is what I have on Louis Joseph Myers.
So then moving to Robert Ivan Nichols, also known as Joseph Newton Chandler III, I believe, was a formerly unidentified identity thief who committed suicide in Eastlake, Ohio in July of 2002. After his death, investigators were not able to locate his family and discovered he had stolen the identity of an 8-year-old boy who was killed in a Texas car crash in 1945. The lengths that Nichols went to in order to hide his identity led to speculation that he was a violent fugitive. The U.S. Marshal Service announced his identification at a Cleveland press conference on the 21st of June 2018. Some internet sleuths suggested that Nichols may have been the Zodiac Killer, as he resembled police sketches of the Zodiac and he had lived in California where the Zodiac operated.
And I think as well you mentioned earlier that poem that was scratched into the table under the Riverside College was signed potentially RH, could have been RN.
That's true as well, and I think I did say RH.
Yeah. But again, if he was an identity thief...
Again, yeah, he probably didn't go to school there. He probably fled from somewhere to there.
Now, next up we have Ross Sullivan. Now, Ross Sullivan became a person of interest as he was linked to the Cherry Joe Bates murder in Riverside. He was a library assistant at Riverside City College, and his co-workers stated that he had gone missing for several days after Cherry Joe's murder. He resembled sketches of the Zodiac and was known to wear military-style boots with footprints like those found at the Lake Berryessa crime scene. Sullivan was also hospitalised multiple times for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Now, I do think he could be linked to the Cherry Joe Bates murder. But I don't have any conclusive proof for that.
And I do personally think the Cherry Joe Bates one is a Zodiac victim.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, to be quite honest.
Yeah. So if he could be linked to that...
Then he could be linked to the rest of them.
Yeah, to the confirmed ones.
So that's what's there.
But again, that's me speculating.
On Ross Sullivan.
In 2007 then, Dennis Kaufman claimed that the Zodiac was his stepfather, Jack Tarrance. Dennis gave several items to the FBI, including a hood like the one worn by the Zodiac Killer.
At the Lake Berryessa.
Yeah. According to news sources, the DNA analysis conducted by the FBI on the items was deemed inconclusive in 2010. So again, inconclusive don't mean it
No, it doesn't mean that it's not a match. It just means
the test couldn't find one.
Yeah.
But I found that interesting. Mm-hmm. And back to you.
So the last suspect that I have here is former California Highway Patrol Officer Lyndon Lafferty, brilliant name, believes that the Zodiac was a 91-year-old man he had met. He referred to this man by the pseudonym George Russell Tucker and claims that he was from Solano County, California.
Jack Russell Terrier?
Using a group of retired law enforcement officers called the Mandamus 7, Lafferty discovered this man and claims he was not pursued due to a cover-up. Tucker died in February 2012 and was not named as he was not considered a suspect by police. So his real name was never released because he wasn't considered a suspect.
So what's the point? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last one I have is, in 2014, Gary Stewart published a book named The Most Dangerous Animal of All, in which he claimed his search for his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., led him to the conclusion that Earl Van Best Jr. was the Zodiac Killer, and the book was adapted for the FX network as a documentary series in 2020.
Okay, and was there any, reasoning given as to why he thought his biological father was the Zodiac?
No, but I'm assuming information he found while trying to find his biological father. So didn't see much on that, but I kind of was going to leave that brief because I didn't personally really want to know much because I want to watch that series.
Yeah, me too. So now we are moving on to...
Let's just find out the name of it.
Yeah, now we're moving on to unnamed suspects, so kind of mystery suspects.
Mysterious girl
Oh. In 2009, a former lawyer named Robert Tarbox, again, interesting name.
He did what with the box?
Tarbox.
He tarred his box.
He filled it with tar.
It'll never function again.
Nah.
There's no medication for that.
There's not. Now, Robert Tarbox was disbarred in August 1975 for failure to pay some of his clients. Now,
What does that
didn't
mean?
know that lawyers had to pay their clients.
Oh, disbarred.
So,
okay.
Disbarred. He
in
lost
terms of a lawyer.
Yeah, he couldn't practice. He wasn't considered a lawyer anymore. So he claimed that in the early 1970s. So in the early 1970s, a merchant mariner walked into his office and confessed to being the Zodiac. The man appeared to be very lucid and described his crimes briefly but persuasively enough to convince Tarbox, who would not reveal his name due to confidentiality. The man claimed he was trying to stop his opportunistic murder spree but never returned to see Tarbox again. Tarbox later took a full-page ad out in the Vallejo Times Herald that he claimed would clear... Sorry, I wrote that he claimed would clear Arthur Lee Allen's name. This was apparently his only reason for revealing this story 30 years after the fact. Now, author Robert Graysmith, who we've mentioned a few times, he's written quite a few books on the Zodiac, believes that this story is entirely plausible. But as I said, we have no name for this man. We have no description of this man. We don't know, does he match the composite or anything about it. Très anonymous.
It is like the crab meat of the croissant.
It's like the crab meat of the croissant. Très bien. It's your turn.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the cleared suspects.
Was I supposed to cover all the unnamed?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I have more.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Brain
they're
is
all
mush.
new.
Brain is mush. So in 2010,
Reverse.
a picture surfaced of Darlene Ferrin with an unknown man who closely resembled the composite sketch of the Zodiac. Now, according to America's Most Wanted, the picture is believed to have been taken around the middle of 1996 or the middle of 1966 or the middle of 1967 in San Francisco. Now, this, I think, if she had a picture with this man and this man was supposedly the killer, she obviously would have known him, and she was conscious when the police got to the crime scene. She would have told the police straight out it was John from down the road.
Yeah.
So I don't put too much stock in that. And then the last thing that I have is an amateur Zodiac researcher named Sandy Betts claims to have been repeatedly harassed and attacked by the people responsible for the Zodiac killings. She believes that 3 men are the culprits, not just one, and that at least one of them still lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. Betts claims that the primary killer was known as Tony and worked in construction, and my brain instantly went, Dad? But,
what are you doing?
It's not my dad, because first of all, he's Irish. Second of all, he wasn't alive. He was only a baby during some of these murders.
I'm just a baby.
I'm just a baby. So Tony worked in construction. She also estimates that there were several dozen fatal Zodiac attacks. So she believes that there was more than one killer involved in this, which would account for the variations in witness descriptions.
Okay.
Because one witness said he was 5'8", one witness said he was 5'11", other witnesses said he had a crew cut, another witness said he had curly brown hair, one witness said he was over 200 pounds, another witness said he was under 200 pounds.
Yeah.
So there's that. So that's all I have. And as much as I love you all, I'm glad to be finished reading.
So now cleared suspects. Tom Voigt, a researcher, said that fingerprint comparison in February of 1989 eliminated 1970 serial killer Ted Bundy as a person of interest in the Zodiac case. I did not even know he was ever a person of interest. Mm-hmm. And whoever named this psychopath here in the next one.
Oh, Jesus, go on.
I don't know why.
Wait, let me put the headphones on for the full effect. Oh.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Edward Edwards.
No.
Could you...
Edward Edwards.
Edward Edwards.
That's like John Johnson.
Yeah.
Thomas.
Edward Edwards, a serial killer who committed 5 murders between 1977 and 1996, was linked to the Zodiac murders and several other unsolved cases by former cold case detective John A. Cameron. John's theories were met with almost universal disdain, especially in law enforcement. So, oh, excuse me,
Oh my God,
that's the cheeky
pig.
Chinese from earlier. But yeah, so we're not going to pay Edward Edwards much heat.
Because his name is shit.
And also, his parents clearly didn't pay him much heat when christening him, or whatever
Clearly.
they did. Then, a name you might be familiar with, and more so than the nickname.
I am.
A domestic terrorist and mathematician, Ted Kaczynski.
Kaczynski.
That one.
Oh no, yeah,
No.
Kaczynski.
Yeah.
Ted Kaczynski.
Also known as the Unabomber.
Unabomber.
Was investigated for possible links to the Zodiac Killer in 1996. Ted worked in Northern California at the time of the Zodiac murders and, like the Zodiac, had an interest in cryptography and threatened the press into publishing his communications with them. Ted was ruled out by both the FBI and San Francisco Police Department based on fingerprint and handwriting comparisons, and by his absence from California on certain dates of known Zodiac activity.
Okay.
And then our last one, another one you'll be familiar with, the Manson family.
Good old Charlie.
Yeah, after the capture of Charles Manson and his murderous cult. A 1970 report by the California Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation stated that all male members of the Manson family had been investigated and eliminated as Zodiac suspects. So the question is,
Who the fuck are ya?
who done it?
Who done it?
Who you think done it?
I don't know. I feel like Arthur Lee Allen is the most kind of talked about suspect, the most well-known suspect. But like, it mightn't have been any of them. It mightn't have been anyone that we've spoken about tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, out of what we know, I'm leaning towards Alan.
Yeah, me too.
Now, yeah, because I do think it was only one person.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, differences in height, like between 5'9" and 5'11", easy mistake to make. Because
Yeah.
who knows 5'10" by an eye?
Also, if you're panicking, like, you're not going to be able to give an accurate description.
Yeah.
And this is a big thing with witness statements. Like, if there's a car crash, someone could say, oh, it was a purple Fiat 500, and then someone else might say, oh no, it was a grey Micra. Like, people's brains do get confused in tense situations like that.
And you're not expecting certain details like that to be important enough for you to be giving them your full attention when you're trying to drive or whatever
Yeah,
the situation
exactly.
is.
And as well, I think with the Lake
So your recall
Berryessa,
can be wrong.
I think with the Lake Berryessa murders, I know that they gave their description, but he was wearing the executioner hood at first. So I'm assuming he took that off at some point, and maybe they just got a quick look, or they were panicking, or he could have cut his hair before he murdered Paul Stein, and maybe that's how he got a crew cut.
You know, could have gone from the curly hair to the crew cut hair after maybe thinking, okay, that's too identifiable.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to consider here with
Whereas a crew cut could be any military man, any navy man, any General Joe.
Yeah. And I think a few of the suspects we've mentioned were mentioned to have
Don't know
been
why
in
a
the
Joe,
military.
but a Joe.
An average Joe, an average John, an average Mike, an average Will, an average Dustin,
And a Teresa.
and an average... Why can't I remember the fourth fella's name? Lucas. An average Lucas.
And that concludes our case on
Yes.
the Zodiac Killer.
The Zodiac.
So let us know your theories if you have any.
Yeah.
Your opinions. If you can, head on over to the Apple Podcasts, if that's what you use,
Rate
and
us
hit
5
the
stars,
5-star
'cause we're
button.
class. We're
Leave
cool.
a little comment as well if you want. If you're listening on any other podcast hosts and they allow you to review, go for it. And yeah, check us out on Instagram. I'm not even going to bother mentioning Twitter because I don't use it.
Instagram,
It exists,
Facebook.
it's there, but Instagram, Facebook, you'll find us on those.
Honestly, you can't escape us, lads.
And we're back to being able to accept voice messages from you guys as well. The link should be in the description of the episode. So feel free to do that as well. Send us a little voice message. Might be in an episode if it's something that we need to answer.
Yeah. Or if it's funny.
Or that too. But yeah, let us know your theories.
Your thoughts, your
what you think
opinions.
out of what we said. Who do you think it could be? Have you read anything else online elsewhere about the case that you think there might be a different suspect we haven't mentioned? so on and so forth. You get the vibe. This is probably the longest one so far, seeing as we've not split it.
It probably should have been 2 parts, but we felt like it would be mean.
And I just thought this one was not as easy to break up as the Dahmer one was.
The Dahmer one was very easy to break up, to be fair. This would have been a lot more difficult, but I will say, I am ready to go home.
I just can't wait to pee.
It is. It's 12:20 at night, and I need to go home and get myself ready for work in the morning.
I need to
pull together a Halloween costume as well.
Ew. Yeah. But with all of that,
I'm just going to be a witch.
So,
true to life.
Just go as yourself.
Yeah.
Because we witches, bitches.
We a witch, bitch.
Anyway, once again, thank you all for listening. Appreciate the support.
Shout
out to
bunch.
Trisha for the case suggestion. Hope we did it justice for you. And yeah, okay. Much love, guys. Until the next time.
Speak to you soon.
Ciao.
Bye.